On January 20th, 2016, firefighters pulled the lifeless body of 51-year-old John Lang from his burning Fresno, California home. The local police immediately classified the horrific scene as a tragic, self-inflicted suicide, closing the book before the smoke had even cleared. But this wasn't a suicide. Days before the fire, John Lang desperately broadcasted to the internet that the Fresno Police Department was actively plotting to murder him and stage it to look exactly like this. The proof wasn't just in his frantic, prophetic warnings. It was in the multiple stab wounds found on his body, the suspicious disappearance of his home security footage, and the impossible physical gymnastics required to stab yourself to death while simultaneously setting your own house on fire. Today, we are examining the chilling final days of a local whistleblower, the forensic impossibilities the coroner tried to bury, and the terrifying reality of a justice system that will mercilessly crush anyone who threatens its revenue stream. John Lang was not a career criminal. He was not a gang member. He was a 51-year-old businessman, a community advocate, and, for a long time, just a regular citizen of Fresno, California. But John possessed a trait that is incredibly dangerous when dealing with local authorities. He paid attention. In the years leading up to his death, John began to notice a pattern in his city. He realized that the local police department was aggressively targeting low-income neighborhoods with automated license plate readers. They weren't hunting violent fugitives. They were hunting for expired registrations, minor infractions, and small-time warrants. They were systematically extracting wealth from the poorest residents of Fresno to pad the city's budget. It was a silent, insidious tax enforced by men with badges and guns. John didn't just quietly disapprove. He became a loud, relentless thorn in the side of the Fresno Police Department. He started a blog. He tracked police vehicles. He documented their tactics and reached out to local news outlets, exposing what he believed was a massive, corrupt racket designed to prey on the vulnerable. He filed complaints, he named names, and he made sure the local authorities knew exactly who was exposing their operation. And that is when the intimidation began. It didn't start with violence. It started with presence. The subtle, psychological warfare of a police cruiser idling across the street from your house at 2 a.m. The strange vans, with tinted windows parked at the end of the block. John realized very quickly that the predators he had been exposing were now hunting him. To protect himself, John turned his home into a fortress. He installed high-definition security cameras, pointing in every direction, desperate to document the harassment. But this is where the narrative takes a dark, terrifying turn. Because John didn't just capture police cars driving by. He captured officers shining high-powered spotlights directly into his windows. He claimed they were using thermal imaging equipment to track his movements inside the house, figuring out which room he slept in. He documented a seemingly endless parade of city workers, unmarked vehicles, and police cruisers loitering outside his property, day and night. He was entirely surrounded by the very people who are sworn to protect the public. But the public wasn't in danger. The police's revenue stream was. As 2016 began, John's online posts shifted from investigative journalism to pure, unadulterated survival mode. He knew his time was running out. He posted on Facebook, Twitter, and local news forums with a chilling, desperate clarity. He wrote, "If I turn up missing or dead tomorrow, it's the Fresno PD." He explicitly warned his friends and followers that the police were going to kill him and that they were going to make it look like a suicide. He begged local journalists to look at his security footage. He screamed into the digital void, pointing directly at the men who were about to end his life. And then, on January 20th, the void answered. Neighbors reported smoke billowing from John's house. When the fire department arrived and forced their way inside, the scene they found defied all logic. John Lang was found unresponsive, but the fire wasn't what killed him. He had been stabbed. Multiple times. Now, pause and consider the official narrative that was immediately pushed by the authorities. The Fresno Police Department, the exact agency John had predicted would murder him, arrived at the scene and almost instantly began leaking the theory that John Lang, a man fighting for his life, had suddenly snapped. They wanted the public to believe that John decided to end his own life, but instead of using a firearm or pills, he chose one of the most agonizing, statistically rare methods of suicide imaginable, self-inflicted stabbing. But he didn't stop there. According to the official narrative, John stabbed himself multiple times in the torso, and then, while bleeding out and fighting the catastrophic shock of massive organ trauma, managed to ignite a fire in his home before collapsing. This is the moment where incompetence ends and systemic, malicious cover-up begins. Let's look at the forensic impossibilities that the local justice system completely ignored. Early reports from the scene, leaked by first responders, indicated that John had stab wounds on his back. Let me repeat that. Stab wounds on his back. A physical impossibility for a suicide victim. Yet, when the official coroner's report was finally released, a coroner who works intimately with the police department on a daily basis, the back wounds magically vanished from the record. The report stated, John died of 3 superficial stab wounds to the chest and abdomen, combined with smoke inhalation. They ruled it a suicide. Case closed. But what about the security cameras? John Lang had a comprehensive, multi-camera surveillance system specifically designed to record everything happening around his property. If he truly committed suicide, the cameras would prove that no one entered his home that day. But miraculously, when investigators processed the scene, the recording equipment was found entirely disconnected. The footage from the hours leading up to the fire was gone, erased. The one piece of empirical, undeniable evidence that could have proven John's final moments was conveniently missing, swallowed up by an investigation controlled by his accused killers. This is not just a failure of police work. This is the weaponization of the justice system. When a police department investigates itself, the outcome is never justice. It is institutional self-preservation. The Fresno police chief, Jerry Dyer, stood in front of the press and vehemently denied any police involvement. He painted John as a paranoid, unstable man suffering from mental illness. This is the oldest, most insidious tactic in the authoritarian playbook: gaslight the victim, character assassination. If you can convince the public that the whistleblower is crazy, you never have to answer for the evidence. But even if John Lang was suffering from severe paranoia, paranoia does not stab you in the chest. Paranoia does not disconnect your security cameras. Paranoia does not set your house on fire. And mental illness certainly does not explain how a man predicts his exact method of murder, names his killers, and then magically dies in the exact manner he described, with all exonerating evidence vanishing into thin air. The local media, completely dependent on the police department for daily access and scoops, largely parroted the official press release. They failed John Lang just as spectacularly as the police did. They traded investigative journalism for access, refusing to push back on an autopsy report that defied medical science and a crime scene that screamed of a cover-up. This case forces us to confront a terrifying reality about the society we live in. We are taught from childhood that if you are in danger, you call the police. But what do you do when the police are the ones parked outside your house in the dark? Who do you call when the badge is the threat? John Lang tried to call the internet. He tried to call the press. He did everything a citizen is supposed to do to protect themselves, and the system crushed him anyway. They erased his life, they erased his footage, and they wrote a final report that insulted his memory and our intelligence. The death of John Lang is not a mystery. It is a judicially sanctioned execution, carried out in plain sight, protected by a blue wall of silence, and rubber-stamped by a coroner willing to bend forensics to fit a manufactured narrative. John Lang knew too much. He spoke too loudly, and he paid for it with his life. He left behind a digital trail of breadcrumbs, begging us to see the truth. The system relies on our short attention spans to bury cases like this. They rely on the passage of time to wash away the outrage. But the internet never forgets, and the blood on the hands of those involved will never wash off. If you think a local police department silencing a lone whistleblower is terrifying, wait until you see what happens when the military decides to cover up the brutal murder of one of their own female soldiers, burning the evidence, and telling her family she pulled the trigger. Click the video on your screen to uncover the devastating, enraging truth behind the death of Lavina Johnson.